As you guys know, today the Joker should be out. I really wanted to make a video that would correlate with this release in somehow, shape, or form, but I just really couldn't. Joker's not a fighting character, and trust me, I did dabble in a few ideas. Then I also remembered that there's a Penguin show going on at the same time as this Joker movie series, and it made me realize there's a lot of interest in Batman's rogues gallery. So what if we add one more person to the Caped Crusaders overall lineup gauntlet, pretty much, being Homelander? And in all honesty, I think he fits right in, and I think because like the best of the Dark Knight's rogues gallery, he is a direct reflection of the Caped Crusader. While both characters experienced extreme trauma at a young age, Batman uses pain to hone his skills in order to help people, whereas Homelander uses his unearned power as a coping mechanism to justify his inherently selfish actions. For this matchup, I'll be using the current series version of Homelander up to season 4 pretty much, and I'll be using the Arkham Batman, as this guy is one of my favorites pretty much. They're still making games about him, so he's pretty relevant, and let's just say this guy has a reputation for being some type of omniscient deity. So if any Batman had the best chance of being Homelander, it would be this guy, especially seeing as how this guy has experience tangling with characters with no prep who are much stronger than him. So let's drop the quintessential evil Superman into Gotham to see if the Dark Knight possesses the strength, cunning, and technical arsenal to take down the world's greatest superhero. But before we get into the stacks breakdown, I would like to implore you guys to subscribe to the channel. We post 2 to 4 shorts a week and regularly fully long edited videos like this one every week. So considering it's free, you guys are getting your money's worth. So hey, at least promise me you'll think about it. Starting off with the Homelander himself, as the greatest hero in history and the face of Vought HQ, there's a lot of things that he just upscales, as pretty much every soup in the verse is weaker than him, so let's just get into that. A lot of characters in the verse find themselves in the wall to small building ranges in terms of AP. I'm gonna do what I did last week and just play a bunch of these instances on screen while sliding up the calculations. I don't really feel like explaining most of these instances, as Homelander would upscale these guys to a pretty significant degree in terms of AP or shown durability. So this part of the analysis should just serve as a nice benching off point for where his greater things start to come in. And to do that, I think we're gonna have to talk about Queen Maeve and Black Noir, as he was shown to be physically superior to the prior, and he just one-shot the latter, with Black Noir being a character who can endure multiple explosions, with one being in the main show and another being in the animated series. The one from the show is pretty rinky-dink, to be honest. It gets into like the small building level ranges, but the one from the boys Diabolical gets his durability into the large building ranges. And yes, this episode is canon. Seeing as how Homelander could one-shot bro, this would grant him a 7.5 to 10 times difference in AP, with the threads explaining why this is the case to be in the description down below. This would mean Homelander with a casual shove of his hand can generate energy equivalent or relative to 56 to 75-ish tons of TNT, which is around city block level. This range of AP is consistent, as Homelander was closer to the blast from the animated instance, and because of that, it's been determined that he endured 289 tons of TNT right there to the face, with even some more generous calculations getting this instance into the small town level ranges. Keep in mind though, he was at the epicenter. He really barely got any damages. There's some scrapes and scratches on him, but it's nothing too major. And stacked on the fact that this is a teenage Homelander, he's on his first mission and he's 18 years old in this episode pretty much, meaning that a current Homelander who is 41 years old should likely be a decent percentage stronger. Not to imply that he trains or anything, but you know, just a basic concept of when you get older you get a little bit stronger. This level of thinking is consistent with feats, as he dunks on Queen Maeve, with him only really getting injured due to him not taking her seriously and just not wanting to fight in general at all. Like, I know a lot of people who think this was a 50-50 encounter, and there's some statements that say this to be the case, but I mean, considering how far she flies back when she's hit with a more passionate punch from bro, compared to the haymakers that Soulja Boy and Butcher just kind of objectively scale to, I kind of find this is not I wouldn't say all that. But anyways, Maeve could endure Soulja Boy's final blast point blank, which due to pixel calcs gets into the C block level ranges as well. While we're talking about this feat, we're gonna have to talk about the hero of heroes himself, Soulja Boy, as he actually no-sold the blast and was only knocked out by utilizing the attack, as we know that after using these, AoE blasts, he becomes heavily fatigued or woozy at the very least. Plus also the fact that he's been sedated and he doesn't even have a single scratch on him at all. Keep in mind, Homelander should upscale him for obvious reasons, but with this stuff out the way, we can get into the town level stuff. For starters, Butcher, when thinking about a weapon that could have possibly killed Soulja Boy when he was under the impression that he was dead, remarks that it must have been something like a hydrogen bomb, which would imply that regular atom bombs wouldn't be enough to do the job. Keep in mind, he's he's not even sure when he says an hydrogen bomb. It's just like the strongest thing he could think of. This town, the large town level metric of AP, is consistent, as Homelander is the strongest hero, which would mean he should upscale Nubia from the canon episode of The Boys Diabolical, who could generate violent thunderstorms very casually, which get into the same town level ranges. At best though, Homelander would be around sea level, as Madam Stinwell confirms that nothing on the planet could kill him, which would extend to nuclear bombs in the low megatons at the very least, as most of our big things like the Sharp Bomba were dismantled back in the 90s. A lot of people like to question the validity of this statement, but seeing as how she said it right to Billy Butch's face, a character who spent the better part of a decade looking into Homelander and Vought HQ as a whole, and for him to just straight up say nothing about this sentiment, especially considering how fast of a mouth he has, especially when it comes to disregarding the achievement of the soups, gives this statement in particular a lot of validity that people just don't seem to grant it. Well, that and the town level stuff that he casually upscales at this point. It's also stated in the guide source that he has the power to level entire cities in minutes. Seeing as the term city in this context is likely referring to New York, and this would grant Homelander some possible city level scaling, but at worst, he would still find himself in the city to town level ranges. As for speed now, he would find himself in the high hypersonic to light speed ranges, as even as early as during the events of his childhood, he found himself pretty casually breaking the sound barrier. During the events of season 1, he was able to casually blitz an explosion and save Butcher from the epicenter of the blast, despite the trigger have already been pulled, which would grant him speed in the hypersonic ranges. There's also the fact that he's alluded to being in space, which would mean he can move at speeds fast enough to escape the Earth's atmosphere, i.e. escape velocity, which is around Mach 33-ish, if I recall correctly. He also scales to Soldier Boy, and he's just arguably faster than him because, you know, he just blitzed him the first time they fought. This showing is pretty telling, as this is the same guy who can consistently react to Butcher and Starlight's light-based attacks, granting him relativistic combat speeds and reaction times. And once again, Homelander is faster. He also literally just has laser vision, which is light speed, so if you don't think his base attack speed is that high for whatever reason, his lasers definitely scale to that level. As for his abilities now, he seems to be like a save-a-dollar Superman. He has laser eyes, super strength, flight, all that nonsense. There's also a lot of like things that aren't really too important, especially in a combat sense, like it's hard to get him sick. He has a low regeneration factor, you know, stuff like that. Nothing too important. He also has enhanced senses, which, I mean, aren't really too consistent, with a major theory going around being that due to Homelander's, you know, crumbling mental state, they're not as refined as they used to be. You know, stuff like that. It's whatever. Moving on to Batman now, and due to the new Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, a lot of things have been called into question, particularly in terms of what's canon. I'm of the opinion that it doesn't really matter, especially considering how careless this new game was when it came to trying to add new additional lore. They unironically said that the Deathshot from the original series was just from a different Earth, like in the multiverse, so, you know, these guys were pretty lazy about it. But to try to keep this scaling chain more neat, I will be drawing from the games and comics that don't have any contradictions with the current game. So, most of the stuff is still on the table, but Suicide Squad, Assault on Arkham, you're not going to be in today's video. But with that being said, the Arkham Batman series has a lot of casual water building level showings. I'm going to do what I did last time and just talk while, you know, these showings are on screen. You might be asking yourself, why don't you play the clips, slide the calcs, and just stop talking and let the music play? Well, said music tends to get copyrighted if I'm not talking over it, so yeah, that's the lore accurate explanation. Kinda crazy, but it's the truth. Well, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the Arkham series. As you've seen now, there's a lot of water building level stuff, which most of it is just from Batman himself, or it's just things that would scare to him in one way or another. A lot of the higher ends come from just inverse and the progression of technology that Batman gets throughout, you know, the games, and we can actually use the feats of those he upscales in order to get a gauge for his attack potency. And for that, we're gonna have to talk about Killer Croc, because even as a beast who was much smaller, younger, and likely weaker than he was in the subsequent Arkham games, he was able to endure an explosion in the small building level ranges due to the dimensions shown in the comic, or in the panel in particular. But you can bump up the yield of this blast drastically, as you can find this area in the game and use the dimensions found there to plug into the blast from the comic, which would get the blast all the way up to 5.5 tons of TNT, which is around large building level. Now, we know Batman barely scales to Croc during the earlier Arkham games, but he could still hurt him in the comics and the video games as well. And seeing as how this was a feat of a weaker and younger Croc, like he's literally smaller than he was in Arkham Origins here, and I would say it's fair enough to scale Batman to this level of power, you know? Keep in mind, this is a pre-Arkham Knight Batsuit, as Batman is stated to just be able to throw a punch much harder while in that suit. To get a gauge of how much harder though, we're gonna have to examine his performance against Deathstroke, who in earlier Arkham games was shown to be pretty relative to him, but by Arkham City he was just stated to be above Batman himself. But we see in this new suit, he's able to just one-shot Deathstroke, which would mean Batman in this new suit is potentially 7.5 to 10 times stronger. And yeah, I know Deathstroke says he was caught off guard, but he jumped right in front of him. You know, that's pure cult, man. Like, what are we going on about? But anyways, this would mean that Batman could output energy equivalent to 41 to 55 tons of TNT with any one of his blows, which is around city block level. From here, Batman would just become even stronger, as he would have 5 years to integrate his technology with that of the Justice League. Batman had his range of technical arsenals extended to that of aliens and even gods, and this sentiment is reflected in the current scaling chain, as during the events of the Suicide Squad prequel comic, Batman is shown to beat Killer Croc in like 2 to 3 blows by himself as well, whereas last time he needed Nightwing's help to get the job done. He even says that if Killer Croc was at full power, it would have just might have been a fight. But we can actually compare both of these performances to get a gauge of how much stronger Batman has become. Since Killer Croc wasn't at full power, I will use the combo towards the end of the fight with Killer Croc as a gauge, as at this point of the fight, Killer Croc was near incapacitated. During this final part, it took roughly Batman and Nightwing 31 blows respectively to bring him down, and in current day, we see Batman beat Killer Croc in a similar state in around 2.5 blows, meaning that by Suicide Squad Killer Justice League, before his amp from Brainiac, Batman's suit would have allowed him to throw a punch 12.5 times stronger as what he could in Arkham Knight, bumping Batman's energy output anywhere from 500.5 to 687.5 tons of TNT per blow, with both of these ends being around multi-C block level. Now, calcs and inverse and multipliers are always going to be a pretty decent source of evidence, but they will never ever trump in-game showings. So what if I told you that I could get them even higher than this with what is shown in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League? And yes, there's a consistent explanation as to why this works as well. That doesn't make it any better though. Trust me, Rockstar agrees with me at this point. For his higher ends, we're going to have to talk about the Flash's performance against Green Lantern, a Brainiac amped Green Lantern as well, whose constructs are so powerful that at worst, they're narratively implied to be durable enough to withstand nuclear blasts, as Amanda Waller has a nuke on standby targeted at Brainiac's ship, but doesn't fire until the Green Lantern's constructs are taken down, implying that Waller thought that the nukes wouldn't do anything due to the Green Lantern's shields. This is notable as the Flash can fight on par with Green Lantern and even generate force so powerful that he can destroy the Lantern's constructs. What does that have to do with Batman? Well, the Flash's armor is made out of Wayne Tech materials. Batman built the Flash's suit durable enough to box with Green Lanterns, and his armor is so durable that it can survive frontal collisions so powerful and devastating that they can plow through Green Lantern constructs, whereas nukes are implied to be useless against the same stuff. I don't see any reason as to why Batman wouldn't at the very least scale relative in terms of durability. I'm not saying they're like 1-to-1 relative, but I mean, it's the same armor on both guys after all. Batman is a full-on Justice Leaguer now, and he's been alluded to fighting even the Sinestro Corps, so I don't see why Batman would give himself armor literally thousands of times weaker than what he would give to the Flash, especially seeing as how, even though as cool as he has no powers. So it's safe to say that Batman's current armor, as crazy as it sounds, would be durable enough to survive forces more potent than nuclear bombs. Yeah, this scale is mostly for his durability, but one could rationalize this scaling to his AP based on a couple of factors. Batman was shown to tussle with Killer Croc, who was kinda able to hurt Batman. We see an amped Batman later on beat Barry down while wearing the same armor before as well, and the fact that Batman was physically amped during the showing really doesn't mean too much, as the amps are pretty unquantifiable. And there's also the fact that Batman himself believes that his Bat family members could take him down if they teamed up, so Batman's AP would likely scale to his durability, as he thinks that, Bat family members could swap hands with him, so Batman should be stronger than Robin after all. This isn't anything too crazy, as historically, Batman's newer suits let him generate stronger punches, so Batman's scaling as high or relative to his suit's durability isn't that far of a stretch, especially considering how his gauntlets and armor are made out of the same materials. As for Arkham Batman's speed, he can casually dodge rocket launchers. His perceptions are calculated to be in the hypersonic ranges, but for higher stuff, even before getting his newer Arkham Knight armor, he was shown to react to electricity. And there's also a statement that Catwoman herself can react to electricity as well. Keep in mind how I said electricity and not lightning. As well, lightning isn't like the massively hypersonic ranges. Electricity travels at the speed of light, or pretty close to it. And if a pre-Arkham Knight Batman could react to this stuff and Catwoman could too, that's pretty much automatic FTL for Batman at this point. This is consistent as Batman is faster than the Suicide Squad as he blitzed them at the beginning of the game, the same squad members who were able to fight on par and eventually defeat Superman, the same character who's flying to the Earth and the Sun and back in a couple of seconds, which would grant Superman, the Suicide Squad, and by extension Batman massively faster than light speed, combat, and reaction times. Alright, this last part is going to be damage control. I'm going to try to keep it real quick, but why is this a thing? If Batman is as strong and fast as I'm saying he is, how did this happen? Well, the Suicide Squad was amped. They were using lantern tech pretty much unironically. Like, there's a surprising amount of statements that just says this stuff isn't like regular bullets. And Batman during his boss battle got hit with like hundreds of these things and he wasn't dead yet. So I mean, that's kind of just consistency, especially if the bullets are powered by like yellow lantern stuff. There's also the fact that Batman was holding back as he was instructed not to kill the Suicide Squad. So pretty much the squad were using like super guns and Batman was holding back, so whatever. So with the stats of each of our combatants set, who would win in a fight? Well, in terms of stats such as AP, they're actually pretty comparable, with them getting into the multi-city block level layers of AP pretty casually, and then they have higher end scaling that stems from like nuclear bombs. But what am I kidding? A lot of you guys doubt me when I say that Spider-Man is stronger than Homelander, so I'm not even gonna really try to even push in the point that the two are comparable in terms of AP. At the very least though, Batman by Kill the Justice League would casually fall into the multi-city block level ends of attack potency. Stack that on top of the fact that he's much faster than Homelander, whereas Homelander caps it around relativistic plus or FTL at best. Batman gets some nice MFTL plus scaling due to the new game. Batman's also much more skilled than Homelander. I could spend the next 2 minutes explaining how skilled he is, pull a bunch of statements and stuff of the sort, but I mean, when I'm putting him up against Homelander, I don't think I really need to prove that sentiment. Think about the 2 fights Homelander has found himself in, particularly his encounters with Soldier Boy and Maeve. Though he was stronger than both of these characters, both of the weaker characters could bruise him and even draw blood from him due to them being much more skilled than him. In those instances, Homelander was able to rely on his superior stats such as speed and AP to really pull out a win, but in a hypothetical fight against Batman, especially currently, at best he's just not touching him, and at worst Batman could hurt him. There's also the wide variety of gadgets under the Caped Crusaders possession, pretty much, I guess. I could talk about these things once again for a prolonged period of time, but I think the most important thing that the Batman has is his fear toxin, as after Arkham Knight, Batman really keeps his stuff on deck, and he utilizes it in character, even in situations where he's not really bloodlusted. We know the top tier characters of the verse are susceptible to like nightmare-induced hallucinations, as Soldier Boy is pretty wary when trying to find Mindstorm, as the Supe has the ability to put his victims into a nightmare-based, coma until they die. And we even saw that it was kind of working on Soldier Boy for a little bit. And yeah, Homelander is stronger than him, but it's not by like an unquantifiably large amount. And if anything, due to Homelander's really fragile mental state at this point in particular, I think that a nightmare-based hallucination would be especially potent against someone as unstable as the Homelander. Stack that on top of the fact that rinky-dink versions of the fear toxin are stated verbatim to drive 10 men insane. And in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, we see the formula work on characters who should be in Homelander's level of power, such as Killer Shark. So in conclusion, Batman can either piece him up and just beat him down the old-fashioned way, but if he doesn't feel like it, he could just throw some of his fear toxin and end the conflict like that. So with that being said, I would put my money on the Arkham Batman, as he has comparable AP, he's much faster, better technology, better hacks, he's more skilled, he just seems to have every really important advantage in this fight. But how do you guys feel? Do you guys think that I downplayed Homelander and wanked Batman? Or was this outcome about what you expected? Whatever you think, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. You guys pretty consistently make me laugh and happy, and I love to see conversations start, so be sure to do that. But as always, I'll see you guys next week. But until then, stay big, G fans.